Hi, my name is Debra Richardson, and I work with you to clean up your vendor data, clean up your vendor processes so that you can pay the right vendor. And this week's Vendor Master File tip of the week is vendor team training. So because of the fraud risk that is inherent in adding new vendors to the vendor master file and changing existing vendors in the vendor master file, I consider vendor team or the vendor team the new front line against cyber criminals. And because of that reason and more, the vendor team really needs to have some training in place. And here are 3 recommendations for training a new vendor team member. So the first recommendation I have is desktop procedures. Document your processes so that the new vendor team member has a place that they can go to train, to read, to refer back to. That means documenting and having one document or one topic per document per ERP. So if you have multiple ERPs, and you're going to have multiple desktop procedures for how to add a vendor, how to change an existing vendor, and so on based on what your company needs are. Now you want to make sure that you provide clear instruction, and then you also want to make sure you provide screenshots. One best practice is to have one team member create the desktop procedures and then have another team member try to follow what they just created and then make updates accordingly. Now, the second recommendation is to pair them with an experienced team member. Now, you're probably already doing that, but make sure that you have them sit through that experienced team member doing all of the processes, following the process docs as they're doing it, and then flip it. Make sure that that new team member does all of those same processes or tasks so that the experienced team member can comment and correct as necessary. And make sure you pick an experienced team member that has some patience and that will not discourage questions from that new team member, because remember, they are new. And then the third and last recommendation for that new team member to get them trained is to implement a vendor process audit. Now, I did actually have this as one of my vendor master file tips of the week. I believe it was last week, but you can find it in the playlist or on my channel. I'll put a link to it in the notes or in the description here. But you want to implement a vendor process audit, and the way that you want to do that is you want to, once you have fully trained that new vendor team member, you want them to go ahead and process on their own. However, you will audit 100% of all of their vendor requests that they have processed, and you will continue to do that until they pass at a rate of 95, 96, 98%, whatever you choose, on a weekly basis. Once they pass that rate, then they can go into the regular, hopefully monthly audit that you're doing on your vendor process. So implement that vendor process audit for that new team member and only release them on their own as a fully fledged member once they have passed that threshold that you identified. So those are my 3 recommendations. If you want more, I will also link to a blog that has 5 recommendations and just some more commentary on this subject. And I'll also link to a resource for training your experienced or your existing vendor team members. So good luck, and don't forget to tune in next Tuesday for next week's Vendor Master File tip of the week.